Enzi, Attorney Cottrell, Attorney O'Brien, Ms. Stefanko. We have Mr. Cobb now live from the ODRC. Attorney Myers is present as well. Before we bring in the jurors, Attorney Myers, is there anything else you would like to put on the record before we continue with the testimony of your client?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Cobb, have you complied with my court orders?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Cobb, do you still continue to be willing to testify here today?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we will bring in the jurors.
All right, all rise.
All right, thanks, ladies and gentlemen. You can be seated as you come in. Thank you. Very good. All right, thanks, everyone. You may be seated. Very good. Thank you. Okay. So it's 2:04 p.m. I will note for the record that we just sanitized the courtroom again. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin with the cross-examination of Mr. Cobb. He is present with us live from the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Correction. His attorney, Gregory Myers, is present with us also. We will take a look at the screen in the back, and we'll make certain, I think we will use the remote control and make certain we turn that on. Attorney LaPrenzi, thank you very much. Very good. Did that work? Thanks, Attorney LaPrenzi. Okay, Attorney O'Brien, you may proceed. Mr. Cobb, you are still under oath.
I'm Kerry O'Brien. I represent Erica. I'm going to ask you some questions. Can you hear me, Mr. Cobb?
I'm sorry. The video was breaking up a little bit, and your voice was like kind of robotic almost. There was a lot of distortion. It's even distorted right now, the video.
I would agree. Let's do the best we can. Fair enough?
Yes, sir.
All right. I'm going to talk, first of all, go back in time and talk about a custody battle between you and Ashley Biggs. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
Would you consider that custody dispute fiercely contested?
Sure.
All right. And there came a point in time where Ashley, who had left you at one point in time, and then returned into your life. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And when she returned, she wanted either visitation or shared custody with GC. Is that correct?
Which time, sir?
Well, this would have been probably sometime around between 2007 and 2010.
I'm trying to recall this. It's been a very long time, but she would come in and out, and sometimes she would see grace, and sometimes she wouldn't. So I suppose that's accurate.
All right, let me back up a little bit. There was a point in time when GC was born, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that would have been about 2005, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then maybe 2 years later, Ashley Biggs parted company with you.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
About 2 years after she was born, she left you. Is that correct? And GC.
Yes, sir.
All right. Did you get some type?
Actually,
Go ahead, sir.
I'm sorry. I I think the first time when she actually left was more around when Gracie was about 6 months or so.
Then she came
I
back.
don't know if that was relevant, but
All right.
Hold on, Attorney O'Brien. Remember, sir, you need to call the minor child GC.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No need to apologize.
We ready, Mr. Cobb?
Yes, sir.
She leaves you and GC, correct?
Yes, sir.
Does there come a point in time when she comes back into your life?
Yes, sir.
At any point in time, do you seek some type of formal agreement where you get custody?
Yes, and I believe I got custody in 2007-ish.
All right. Now, a couple years goes by. Do you have much contact with Miss Biggs during this time?
On and off.
And is she seeking some sort of shared parenting?
Not that I can recall at that time, no, sir.
Is she seeking visitation?
When she would come by, it would be to see Grace. Any other visitation than that, not really.
All right. Does there come a point in time, say around 2010, that she files an action in court seeking custody?
If she did, I'm not aware.
Did sometime in 2010 you go to court because of GC?
In 2010, it's not ringing any bells, sir.
About what date or year do you go to court and you lose custody or possession of GC?
That would have been, if we're referring to the same time, 2011.
That would have been around October 5th?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the court took custody away from you and gave it to Ashley?
Yes, sir.
That set off a multitude of court hearings?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, did there come a point in time in around, let's say, May of 2012, did you have anything to do with putting a tracking device on Ashley's car?
Did you say you too?
No. I said, did you have anything to do with putting a electronic tracking device on Ashley's car?
No, sir.
Would you know if anybody that you are close to bought a tracking device for that car?
I'm sorry, one more time?
Do you know who may have purchased a tracking device for that car?
No, sir.
Do you have a domestic violence conviction where Ashley is the victim?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the fact that you were charged with aggravated murder. Sometime in maybe July of 2012, did the Summit County Grand Jury charge you with aggravated murder an attached death penalty specification, a charge of ag robbery and abuse of corpse, and several other felony charges?
Yes, sir.
And that case went on for maybe 6 or 7 months, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And sometime, I believe, in February of 2013, you pled guilty, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you pled guilty to the aggravated murder, true?
Yes, sir.
Now that aggravated murder was of whom?
The aggravated murder was for the charge of Ashley.
Who was the victim in the aggravated murder charge?
Ashley?
Ashley Biggs.
Yes, sir.
In that indictment, was anybody else indicted on that indictment for the aggravated murder of Ashley Biggs?
No, sir.
That aggravated murder included a kidnapping, correct?
I remember it had a great deal of charges on it, sir. I do remember kidnapping being one of them.
And the murder itself involved a beating, correct?
We fought, yes, sir.
Did it also include a strangulation of Ashley Biggs, correct?
I believe. I don't have it in front of me, but I'm assuming it did, sir.
In return for the death penalty being dropped, you agreed to plead guilty to all those charges for a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. Is that right?
That's not entirely correct, sir. There was some other things going on with the kids at that time, but the plea of those charges did include that sentence.
I just want to focus on the criminal case, Mr. Cobb. Agreed?
Yes, sir, and I believe that's what I'm referring to as well, that the aspects of the criminal case when I was in front of Ms. Jones's courtroom.
When you were in front of Judge Jones for a plea, did Judge Jones ask you if you had anything to say?
Yes, sir.
Okay? And when you addressed Judge Jones, you indicated that you were taking full responsibility for those charges, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you knew at that point in time there was only one sentence that Judge Jones could impose, correct?
I think the court can do whatever they want to within the parameters that they have, so I don't know what the sentence would be, but I mean, they could sentence accordingly.
Your agreement with the state of Ohio was that you would plead guilty if they did not prosecute you, including the death penalty. Isn't that correct?
That was not my concern, sir.
Nevertheless, you knew that there was only going to be one sentence if they dropped the death penalty, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that sentence was life in prison without the possibility of parole. True?
Yes, sir.
Now, you went off to prison, correct?
Yes, sir.
And approximately a year or so later, possibly sooner, you filed an appeal, correct?
Yes, sir.
You filed an appeal even though you had agreed to life in prison without the possibility of parole. True?
Yes, sir.
That appeal was denied, correct?
Yes, sir.
So in effect, Mr. Cobb, instead of going to trial and protesting your innocence, you decided to take the plea agreement whereby you did not face the death penalty, correct?
I don't believe that's entirely accurate, sir.
When you stood in front of Judge Jones, you pled guilty, didn't you?
Yes, sir, but I believe that you're stating the only reason I pled guilty was to get the death penalty taken off, and that's not the case. As I tried mentioning before, there was some issues going on with the children and losing them if I did not resolve my case. So I can't say that pleading guilty was solely for taking the death penalty off. Because at that time, truly, I didn't care what the court was going to do to me. My main focus was and has been the children, my children, our children.
The children were not part of the criminal case, were they, Mr. Cobb?
My children are in the state's care, and if my case was not resolved within a year, I could have lost them. That's how it was presented to me.
With respect to this criminal case in 2012, we're talking about you pleading guilty to the murder of the mother of GC, correct?
Yes, sir, that is what you're talking about.
In spite of you pleading guilty, you filed this appeal. Is that your way of not accepting responsibility?
I'm sorry, I don't exactly understand that question.
By filing this appeal, you were trying to overturn your plea?
No, sir. Mind you, my knowledge of law isn't very good, but I believed that the information that was seemingly restricted from coming into the court would have been able to be presented during an appeal, but I didn't know how the law worked, and I found out that that was not the case.
Once you pled guilty, for all intents and purposes, you knew your case was over, correct?
No, sir.
Part of this case, the aggravated murder case, involved you driving Ashley's car to a location in Wayne County. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You were born and raised, well, not born there, you were born in Oklahoma, but you were raised in Wayne County, correct?
From roughly 10 years of age and up, yes, sir.
The place where you dropped off Ashley's car, was Ashley in the car?
Yeah, I'm sorry, but you're asking me, was Ashley in her car when I drove it to our bridge in the field?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Was Ashley already dead?
Yes, sir.
Did you strangle her?
I'm not the one who strangled her, sir.
Would you please repeat that?
I am not the one that strangled her, sir.
I see. So now you pled guilty, and now you're saying that you didn't kill her. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
You drove the car to the far end of a cornfield, correct?
Yes, sir.
That cornfield was pretty far off the road, true?
Yes, sir. I don't know how far, but decent walk.
And you drove it to the end of the cornfield where a tree line and Chippewa Creek intersect, true?
Yes, sir.
This piece of property is very close to your parents' property, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
So you were very familiar with this area, correct?
Yes, sir.
With respect to a period of time after your conviction, I'm going to draw your attention to 2014, 2015. Do you in general recall that time?
I was up at Lake Erie Prison, if I recall.
All right. Did there come a time during that time frame where your wife, Erica, filed for divorce?
That's not accurate.
What's inaccurate about it?
I believe that I signed the divorce papers in 2013, if I remember right. There was something that she mailed me about the divorce or dissolution, because I couldn't do our marriage anymore. So I remember she typed it up and I signed it, and I believe I mailed it back. I think I mailed a copy home as well. But I believe it was 2013-ish.
Very good. You weren't real happy about the divorce, were you?
I don't think any man would be happy about a divorce.
Sometime after the divorce was final, Did you learn that Erica married your good friend, Christopher Michael Stefanko?
I don't remember when they got married, so I can't say if it was after the divorce or before. I don't recall.
Did you come to learn that Erica and whom you call Michael Stefanko were married?
I'm sorry, you asked me if I recall when they were married?
Did you come to learn that they were married?
Yes, sir.
And you weren't very happy about that either, were you?
Sir, at the time and still currently, I'm under a life sentence, so them getting married is really neither here nor there. I mean, one part.
All right. Now, did you and Erica ever plan to kill Ashley Biggs?
No, sir.
At your sentencing, when Judge Jones asked you if you had anything to say, did you say anything about Erica?
At sentencing,
Yes, sir.
I told the judge that there's a lot that I need to say about this, but there's very little that I can.
Mr. Cobb,
Yes, sir.
I'm asking you specifically, at sentencing, did you ever mention during your sentencing allocution anything about Erica Lyon?
Again, I said that there's a lot of things that need to be said, but there's so little that I can at that time.
Judge, can you instruct the witness to answer directly?
Well, Attorney O'Brien, I think he's answering your question. If you want to ask him directly, did he reference her name? You can do that. We'll see what his answer is.
Did you mention Erica's name at sentencing?
No, sir.
About a year after you went to prison, did you have a visit from a New Franklin detective by the name of Hitchings?
Yes, sir.
And without a lot of verbiage, did he ask you about Erica?
When he came up to see me at Lake Erie?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Did you mention anything about Erica to him?
I told him from the severity of the situation, I have to talk to an attorney.
If I could have a yes or no answer, did you mention anything about Erica being involved to Detective Hitchings?
I informed Mr. Hitchings that out of the severity of the situation, that I really had to speak to an attorney.
So you did not mention Erica at that time, correct?
No, sir.
So now years after you murdered Ashley Biggs, you're now saying that somebody else was involved, even though you never said anything in 2012 or 2014, correct?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
In 2020, the present day, 8 years after you murdered Ashley Biggs, and after having a chance to tell the judge in 2012 and Detective Hitchings in 2014, now you're coming in and saying that someone else was involved. Correct?
That's not accurate, sir.
Well, did you have a chance to mention Erica's name in 2012 to the judge? Yes or no?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I was just trying to respond.
Yes or no? Did you mention Erica's name in 2013 actually to the judge?
Erica's name, no, sir.
2014, did you mention to Detective Hitchings that she was involved?
You're referring to stating Erica's name, Mr. Hitchings, sir?
Correct.
No, sir, I did not mention Erica's name to Mr. Hitchings.
Is it fair to say that you and your family still hold out hope of you getting out of prison? True?
I would say it's fair to say that.
Right. Is it fair to say that your mother, Cindy Cobb, also holds that hope?
I don't think I can speak to what my mother's hopes are, sir.
Does she support you in the hope of getting out of prison before the end of your life?
Yes, sir.
Does a lady by the name of Mary Brickman, do you know her?
Yes, sir.
Does she support your hope of getting out of prison before the end of your life?
I don't think I can speak to what she hopes for, sir.
Has she
I'm
put...
sorry, I don't speak to Mary very often, so I'm sorry.
That's fair. Has she put money in your commissary account ever before?
No, sir. Or at least not that I can recall, I'm sorry.
If we had testimony earlier today that she did, would you refute that?
I just stated I don't recall if she's ever put money on my commissary. I'm not sure, she may have. I just don't recall.
If I could have a moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
Your Honor, thank you.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Desiree. Attorney LaPrenzi Cross? Thank you.
Redirect?
I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
I apologize. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Cobb. I got a few more questions to follow up here after Mr. O'Brien, okay?
Yes, sir.
You can hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Mr. O'Brien was asking you some questions regarding you mentioning Erica Stefanko's, which was Lyon at the time, Erica Lyon, her name to Detective Hitchings. In 2017, you mentioned the name to him in regards to in way of a letter. Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
You wrote Detective Hitchings a letter and mentioned and talked about her involvement. Is that fair?
Yep. Yes, sir.
So let's go back to that plea. When you took that plea, as you recall, Judge Corgle Jones was the judge, I was the prosecutor, and we made an agreement that you would spend the rest of your life without the possibility of parole and accepted the charges, correct?
Yes, sir.
And for that, we took the death spec off, correct?
Yes, sir.
There were other possible sentences you could have gotten, correct?
I'm sure.
There was life sentences with parole eligibility, correct?
Yes, sir.
We didn't offer that to you, though. This was your only choice. Is that fair?
Yes, sir. That's fair.
Are you saying today that you have no responsibility in the death of Ashley Biggs?
No, sir. No.
And do you understand, has it been explained to you that even if you weren't the one who actually killed her, you are still just as guilty for your involvement?
Yes, sir.
So when you talk about trying to appeal, your appeal was not trying to get out from under the charges, but the sentence?
No, sir.
What was it for?
I was trying to bring in more information to the case,
All right.
but I didn't.
Go ahead.
But I didn't know law, and it was explained to me that an appeal could only address things in the record of the case. You can't bring in anything outside of that to the appeal. And I didn't know.
And when you stood before Judge Corgle Jones and she asked you, did you have anything to say, why didn't you mention Erica?
Fear.
Fear of what?
Something happening to my children.
And how would something happen to your children if you talked about Erica?
Threats over the years have been made clear if anything were to be said.
Mr. O'Brien has indicated or I guess alluded to the fact in his questions that you are just now, for the first time, bringing up Erica into this as being involved in Ashley's death. You recall that?
Yes, sir.
And is that true? It's the first time you brought it up?
No, sir.
Did you have discussions with your attorneys back in 2012 regarding Erica's involvement?
One of them, yes, sir.
And that, when you discussed it with your attorney, what was it that kept you then from talking about it to the judge or anybody else?
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Hold on.
Losing my children.
Hold on.
I'm sorry.
Overruled.
the judge has overruled the objection. Go ahead. And told your attorney in 2012 about Erica's involvement. So my
Yes.
question to you then is, if you told your attorney, then why didn't you tell anybody else, like the judge or the state, or go to trial?
It was very specifically explained to me that if I did not resolve my case within the year anniversary of those kids being JR6, that I would lose them.
All right? And were you protecting anybody in 2012 when you took that plea?
My children.
And what about Erica?
I wasn't trying to. My main focus was I could not lose my kids. After what already happened to GC, I couldn't lose the rest of them.
And if you had told the public, the judge, the prosecutor's office, what you had told your attorney about Erica's involvement, what do you believe would have happened to Erica?
Objection, Your Honor, speculation.
Sustained.
Did you have a concern about what was going to happen to Erica if you told the state or the judge about her involvement?
I wasn't thinking about her. I was focused on my kids. I was worried about what would happen to them.
And who are you hoping would get to keep your kids?
I just want them safe.
And who did you want them safe with?
At what time?
At the time you were being prosecuted.
Preferably not Erica, but she was already on her way to get them.
At some point, let me ask you, what was the name of your company?
Cobb Cable Company.
And how long had you had Cobb Cable Company?
8 years. It was Principal Connections before that, but Cobb Cable, it's the same business.
And at some point in time, did the name of your company change?
Yes, sir.
When did the name of your company change?
When I was in the county jail,
And who changed the name of your company?
Erica did.
And what did she change it to?
I'm sorry, I don't remember.
Was it something like Chop Cable or something along those lines?
That sounds right.
And how long after you were arrested do you believe that happened?
Weeks.
And who then took over running that company?
Mike and Erica.
What kind of equipment did you have that you used to run your company?
Everything.
What types of, did you have vehicles?
Judge, I'm going to object.
Yes, sir.
Hold on.
Outside the scope of the cross-examination.
Overruled.
Did you have vehicles?
Yes, sir.
How many vehicles?
We had up to 5 or 6 at one time, sir.
What happened to those vehicles?
As the company went up and down in needs, some ended up getting sold off.
And when they were sold, who got the money?
Money would go back into the company.
And whose company was it at that point in time?
When I was in jail, Erica and Mike's.
And did you ever get the money for that equipment being sold off?
No, sir.
So your company was sold off piece by piece. Is it still in existence?
Not to my knowledge.
So Erica and Mike sold off all the equipment to your company and you didn't see a dime of it?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Cobb, when you wrote your letter to Detective Hitchings, and you mentioned about Erica, you also mentioned about conversations under a tree. Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
And where was that tree?
The tree was in the parking lot of where Ashley was killed.
While you were in jail facing these charges, did Erica continue to tell you she loved you?
Yes, sir.
Did she tell you she would never leave you?
Yes, sir.
Did she leave you?
Ultimately, yes, sir.
And she divorced you?
Yes, sir.
Did you believe her when she told you those things? That she would love you and would never leave you?
Objection form, Judge.
Yes, sir.
Hold on, overruled.
Yeah, I have nothing further.
Okay. Attorney O'Brien?
Nothing further, Judge.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Cobb. Attorney Myers, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
You're welcome, Your Honor.
Thank you. Okay. All right, so with that, we'll just have Ms. Kroll or Ms. Sweeney, if we could go ahead and end the session on the end unit, that would be great. All right. Are you going to be prepared for your witness this afternoon? I know we will most likely take a recess, but are we going to have another witness so I can talk to the jurors about that?
Yes.
Okay, all right. What time do you think that will be? In about 10 minutes?
I need to talk to Miss Adele
Okay,
a few minutes before.
Fair enough.
I believe I told them to be here by 3.
okay, why don't we
So I
say,
just-
why don't I give them a break until about 10 after 3, and
That'd
we
be
could
perfect.
plan on 3:15, is that okay?
That's perfect. Thank you,
Do you
Judge.
think one more witness for the day?
Yes, Judge.
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, then what we're going to do, like you've heard, could we just, oh good, the session's been ended, very good. We'll go ahead and take a recess. I'd ask that you be back in Judge McLaughlin's courtroom by 10 after 3. Remember, and please don't get tired of me telling you this, but it's so critical. You're not allowed to talk about the case with anybody. You're not allowed to do any independent research. Nobody's allowed to have contact with you. You're not allowed to discuss anything about the case. That time is starting to approach as we move through the trial. So with that, I'll see you back here. You've heard it probably at 3:15. All right? Thank you very much. We'll sanitize the courtroom. Thank you.
All rise.
On the record at this time?
No, Judge.
Okay. Attorney O'Brien, anything on the record?
Nothing further.
Okay, so we think that then we're going to be calling the child then, Attorney LaFrenzy?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Okay. All right.